Ladies and gentlemen, I need everyone to sit down because the gymnastics routine currently being performed by sections of the UK media deserves an Olympic medal. Not gold, not silver, platinum level delusion. So let's set the scene. The Daily Telegraph wakes up one morning and decides that the real scandal of the week, the real story demanding urgent coverage, is not the catastrophic legal chaos surrounding Andrew, former prince, not the arrest itself, not the allegations that have followed him for years, not the institutional questions about how this situation was handled. No. The real outrage, apparently, is that Prince Harry and Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, did not release a statement. I'm going to say that again slowly so we can really let it sink in. They are upset that two people who do not work for the monarchy, do not represent the crown, do not attend palace briefings, do not sit on royal committees, do not receive royal funding, and live 5,000 miles away in California, did not comment on a legal matter involving a family member they have no professional relationship with. The level of obsession is not even subtle anymore. It's not even thinly veiled. It's just naked desperation for content involving Harry and Meghan, regardless of whether it makes any logical sense. Now, let's compare something, because math matters, logic matters, consistency matters. Did William, Prince of Wales, the heir to the throne, release a statement? No. Did Catherine, Princess of Wales, release a statement? No. Did Prince Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh, release a statement? No. Did Anne, Princess Royal, who actually works more than almost anyone in the royal family, release a statement? No. Did Princess Beatrice, Andrew's own daughter, release a statement? No. Did Princess Eugenie, Andrew's other daughter, release a statement? No. Did Zara Tyndall, the Queen's granddaughter, release a statement? No. Did Peter Phillips release a statement? No. Did Lady Louise Windsor release a statement? No. Did the Earl of Wessex release a statement? No. In fact, did any individual member of the royal family release an independent personal statement? No. The only official statement came from Buckingham Palace as an institution. So why is the only silence being treated like a moral crime, like a scandalous absence, like a deliberate snub, the one coming from California? I'll tell you why. Because Harry and Meghan are content. They are engagement. They are clicks. They are headline fuel. They are the reliable villain arc that certain tabloids have been milking like it's a renewable energy source that will never run out. Let's be brutally honest here and play out the alternate scenario. What if Harry and Meghan had released a statement? What would the headlines be? Let me write them for you. Sussexes insert themselves into royal crisis they have nothing to do with. The audacity. Harry and Meghan make Andrew scandal about them. Hypocrisy from California. Couple who demanded privacy now comments on family matters. Harry attacks family during a sensitive time with ill-judged statement. Meghan exploits royal scandal for attention. Sussex statement. Timing raises questions about motives. Are Harry and Meghan using Andrew crisis to stay relevant? You know it. I know it. They know it. The outlets writing these "where's their statement" pieces absolutely know it. This is not about actually wanting a statement. This is not about genuine concern that Harry and Meghan should weigh in on complex legal matters involving extended family. This is about wanting a reaction. Any reaction, something, anything that can be spun, dissected, criticized, and turned into a week's worth of content. And when they don't get one, when Harry and Meghan simply decline to participate in the circus, they manufacture outrage about the lack of reaction. That's not journalism. That's dependency. That's an addiction to Sussex content that has become so profound that even their silence is treated as newsworthy. Now, let's talk about something deeper, because there's a long-established pattern here that we need to name. Every single time something deeply uncomfortable happens within the royal institution, every time there's a scandal, a crisis, a moment of institutional embarrassment, the Sussexes' names get dragged into it like a reflex. It's almost Pavlovian at this point. Why does this happen? Because they left. And leaving disrupted a narrative structure that the media had grown very, very comfortable with. When Harry and Meghan were inside the system, they could be framed however the tabloids wanted. They could be spun, briefed against, corrected by palace sources, silenced through institutional pressure, controlled through access. When they stepped away in 2020, they removed that control mechanism entirely. And control, my friends, is addictive. Loss of control creates rage in systems that are used to having it. The media ecosystem built around royal access runs entirely on proximity. Proximity creates access, access creates stories, stories create revenue. When proximity disappears, so does leverage. And when leverage disappears, resentment grows.
So now every silence becomes a storyline. Every absence becomes a scandal. Every choice not to engage becomes evidence of something. Coldness, calculated distance, hypocrisy, whatever narrative needs filling that day. Now let's bring in what Dr. Shola said, because she didn't whisper, she didn't hedge, she came in with the verbal equivalent of a flamethrower and said what needed to be said. She basically told UK media, keep Harry and Meghan out of your mouths when it comes to Andrew. After years of maligning them, using them as bait and distraction, running thousands of negative stories questioning everything about them, you don't get to demand their commentary now. And here's the uncomfortable truth sitting under all the theatrical outrage. For years, certain outlets ran relentless negative coverage about Harry and Meghan, questioning their motives for everything, questioning their character at every turn, questioning their loyalty to the crown, questioning the legitimacy of their relationship, questioning their parenting, questioning their mental health claims, questioning their financial decisions, questioning everything all the time with maximum hostility. They were called grifters, complainers, attention seekers, manipulators, liars, traitors, and worse. But now, suddenly, their voices are required, their perspective is essential, their statement is desperately needed. You don't get to call someone irrelevant and indispensable at the same time. You don't get to spend years saying nobody cares what they think and then demand to know what they think the moment it's convenient for your narrative. Pick a struggle. Also, let's examine institutional protocol for 2 seconds like rational adults. When there is an arrest, when there is police custody, when there are serious legal implications, when charges may be pending, families typically do not freelance public commentary. Major corporations don't let every employee or former employee issue independent statements about company crises. Governments don't let every cabinet member or former official release individual takes on sensitive matters. Major institutions don't operate that way because it's strategically nonsensical. Centralized communication is standard crisis management across every major institution on the planet. The idea that Harry and Meghan should independently release a statement about a legal matter involving a relative they are not professionally tied to, have no official relationship with, and live on a different continent from is not only illogical, it's strategically absurd. What would they even say? They have no information that the public doesn't have. They have no official role that would make their commentary meaningful. They have no obligation, legal, moral, or professional, to comment. They gain absolutely nothing by commenting. They risk everything by commenting. Whatever they say will be twisted, dissected, used against them. They feed the machine that has spent years trying to destroy them. So they stayed silent. And that silence drives certain newsrooms into an absolute spiral because it deprives them of narrative ammunition. Here's what really stings for these outlets. Harry and Meghan's silence doesn't diminish their visibility. It doesn't reduce their cultural relevance. It doesn't make them disappear. It amplifies them. They are so central to the modern royal conversation, so deeply embedded in the cultural discourse around the monarchy, that even their absence is treated as presence. Even their decision not to speak becomes a story. That's not irrelevance, that's influence. And influence without control is terrifying for a media class that thrives on shaping perception, directing narratives, and controlling how public figures are understood. When Harry and Meghan were working royals, their image could be shaped by palace briefings, unnamed sources, strategic leaks, and coordinated coverage. Now, they control their own narrative. They speak when they want to speak. They stay silent when silence serves them better. And that shift in power dynamics is intolerable to outlets that built entire business models around having access and leverage. Now let's talk psychology for a second, because this is important. Obsession isn't always about hatred. Sometimes it's about unresolved narrative tension. Harry and Meghan leaving the royal family shattered a storyline that had been centuries in the making. The obedient spare who supports his brother forever. The wife who slots into her supporting role without question. The hierarchy that remains unquestioned and unchallenged. The institution that continues unchanged generation after generation. Instead, Harry and Meghan said no. They chose autonomy over tradition. They chose their mental health and their children's well-being over institutional expectations. They chose financial independence over royal funding with strings attached. And that choice still echoes. It still reverberates through every discussion about the monarchy, about duty, about modernization, about what the institution needs to survive.
So, when chaos erupts around someone like Andrew, when the institution faces serious questions about accountability, protection, and judgment, there's an instinct in certain media quarters to pull Harry and Meghan back into the frame, to re-anchor the story around the breakaway couple, to remind audiences who the dramatic ones were supposed to be, to redirect attention away from uncomfortable institutional questions and back toward the familiar villains. Except, reality keeps interfering, because Andrew's controversies are not the Sussexes' doing. They are not the Sussexes' responsibility. They are not the Sussexes' PR problem. And the attempt to drag them into it feels less like legitimate journalism and more like deflection. It's almost impressive how predictable the cycle has become. Something serious happens within the royal family or around the institution, headlines explode about the actual crisis, and then, within 24 to 48 hours, somehow, where are Harry and Meghan? Why haven't the Sussexes commented? Sussex silence raises eyebrows. Questions over Harry and Meghan's response. Every single time. They're in California, living their lives, raising their children, running their foundation, working on their projects, breathing, existing, not issuing palace bulletins because they don't work for the palace. The real irony here, the absolutely delicious contradiction, is that for years, the loudest, most persistent criticism of Harry and Meghan was that they were airing family matters publicly. The Oprah interview? Criticized for discussing family. The Netflix documentary? Attacked for showing their perspective. Harry's memoir, Spare? Absolutely eviscerated for sharing his experiences. The message was clear and repeated constantly. Stop talking about the family. Stop sharing private matters. Stop airing internal issues publicly. Now, the complaint is that they're not airing family matters publicly. Now the outrage is their silence. You cannot script this level of contradiction. It would be rejected as too unrealistic in a satire. And let's be completely real about the alternative scenarios. If Harry criticized Andrew publicly, Imagine the outrage. How dare he attack family members? Disloyal son attacks father's brother. Sussex vendetta against royals continues. If he defended him or expressed support, imagine the reaction. Harry condones Andrew's behavior. Sussex moral bankruptcy exposed. Meghan's influence leads Harry to defend the indefensible. If Meghan spoke about it in any capacity, Hollywood interference in British family matters. American outsider weighs in where she's not wanted. Meghan uses crisis for attention. There is absolutely no version of this scenario where they win in the tabloid framework. The framework is designed, structurally designed, for them to lose. So silence becomes the only rational move. And here's the thing. That silence, ironically, exposes the obsession. Because if Harry and Meghan were truly irrelevant, if they were really the has-beens, the desperate attention seekers, the fading celebrities that certain headlines love to claim they are, no one would notice their absence. No one would care whether they commented. Their silence would be expected and unremarkable. But they do notice. They always notice. Their silence becomes a story. An absence becomes a presence. A non-statement becomes headline-worthy. That tells you everything you need to know about who actually has power in this dynamic. Now here's the part where I get serious for a moment. It is completely, entirely, utterly reasonable for two private citizens to not comment on a legal matter involving extended family members. That's not avoidance, that's not coldness, that's not scandal. That's boundaries. And boundaries drive people who are used to unlimited access absolutely wild. The UK media machine built decades, generations of profit on intimate royal coverage, exclusive photos, insider sources, detailed knowledge of movements and relationships and dynamics. When Harry and Meghan removed themselves from that machine, they didn't just disrupt a narrative, they disrupted a revenue stream. And when revenue streams get disrupted, narratives get aggressive. So you end up with headlines that sound less like reporting and more like grievance. Why aren't they speaking? Why aren't they reacting? Why aren't they participating? Why aren't they giving us content?
Because they don't have to. That's the answer. They stepped away, and stepping away means you are no longer required to perform commentary on command. You are no longer obligated to provide content for an ecosystem that profits from your name while attacking your character. The demand itself is incredibly revealing. It suggests that no matter how many times the Sussexes say clearly and explicitly, "We are not part of the structure anymore," certain outlets refuse to emotionally process that separation. It's like an ex-partner who keeps checking your social media, keeps asking mutual friends about you, keeps complaining that you didn't comment on their family reunion drama or weigh in on their cousin's wedding. Move on. The fixation says more about the watcher than the watched. And here's something else that's crucial to understand. Harry and Meghan have built independent platforms, independent charitable work through Archwell, independent media ventures through their production deals, independent public identities separate from the institution. That independence means they choose when to speak. They choose what to address. They choose their focus and their priorities. And that choice, that autonomy, unsettles people who are used to dictating the script, controlling the narrative, and determining what gets discussed and how. So when Dr. Shola says forcefully, "Keep them out of your mouths," what she's really highlighting is the blatant double standard and the deflection tactic. When Andrew controversies emerge, the spotlight should stay exactly where it belongs, on Andrew, on his documented behavior and choices, on institutional response, on accountability, on how the palace handled or failed to handle the situation, on what protections may have been extended, on what questions remain unanswered, not on whether a couple in Montecito who have zero professional connection to any of this drafted a press release. Redirecting attention to the Sussexes dilutes scrutiny of the actual issue, and that's not accidental. It's convenient, it's strategic, maybe not consciously, but structurally. The machine is predictable. The patterns are clear. But here's the beautiful irony that I want to leave you with. Every attempt to drag Harry and Meghan back into institutional chaos reinforces the fact that they still matter enormously. You don't demand statements from people who are irrelevant. You don't write breathless headlines about silence unless that silence has significant weight. You don't build entire news cycles around two people's absence unless their presence still fundamentally shapes the conversation. And their silence clearly has weight. Their absence clearly matters. Their choices clearly still influence the discourse. So the question becomes, can they just live in peace? In theory, yes. They're private citizens. They should be able to live their lives. In reality, as long as the monarchy remains one of the most globally scrutinized institutions, and as long as Harry and Meghan remain two of the most recognizable former members who chose to leave on their own terms, the media will keep circling. But here's the crucial shift that's happened. They don't control the Sussexes anymore. They can speculate, they can complain, they can demand, they can write headlines, but they cannot compel, they cannot force participation, they cannot dictate behavior. And that loss of control is the real story under all the noise about statements and silence. So when you see these headlines framing their silence as scandalous, understand what you're actually witnessing. It's not about responsibility or morality or family duty. It's about relevance, leverage, control, and a narrative ecosystem that refuses to evolve past a relationship that ended years ago. Harry and Meghan chose autonomy. Autonomy comes with criticism. They knew that. They expected that. But it also comes with freedom. And judging by the fact that even their silence generates headlines, that freedom clearly didn't make them disappear or become irrelevant. It made them untouchable in a different way. And that, more than anything, more than any statement they could write, more than any comment they could make, is what keeps certain newsrooms pacing the floor at night. Thanks for watching, everyone. If this resonated with you, subscribe for more honest media analysis. Let's keep calling out these patterns. Until next time, stay critical, stay informed, and don't let obsessive media coverage gaslight you into thinking any of this makes sense. I'll see you in the next one.